John Lennon. A lot of people remember John Lennon for his music with the Beatles. He was serious and creative, and many young people of the 1960s and 1970s thought he spoke for them. Lennon was born on October 9, 1940, in Liverpool, England. When he was a child, he listened to the music of rock and roll singers like Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Little Richard. At 15, when he was in art school, Lennon started his first rock group, the Quarrymen. The members of the group were Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Pete Best, who played the drums. The Quarrymen later changed their name to the Silver Beatles and then the Beatles. When Pete Best left the group, Ringo Starr joined the Beatles as the drummer. Between 1958 and 1962, the group played in nightclubs in Liverpool and Hamburg, Germany. Then the Beatles made a record called I Wanna Hold Your Hand and had their first big success in Britain. Please Please Me came a short time after that, and it became number one. Lennon was both a singer and a songwriter. He wrote many of the Beatles songs, and most of these songs became number one all over the world. They were romantic and intelligent, and today's musicians still play them. Lennon did not only make music and films with the Beatles, he also wrote 2 books. The first one in 1964 and the second one a year after that. In 1967, he acted in a film called How I Won the War. On December 8, 1980, John Lennon died in New York, shot dead outside his apartment building. Every year, thousands of people come together in New York Central Park to remember him. For many people in the world, he was someone very special. Mahatma Ghandi. Mahatma Ghandi was born in India in 1869. He became one of his country's leaders. Life was difficult when he was young. He got married at the age of 13, a common custom in India at that time. He studied law at the university. He went to London and became a lawyer. Then he returned to his country. A few years later, he went to work in South Africa. He organized demonstrations and they sent him to prison several times. 20 years later, he returned to India. There he worked hard to help the poor. He played a very important role in the independence of India. A fanatic killed him in 1948. William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born in Stratford on 23rd of April, 1564. His father, John Shakespeare, was an important man in the town. William did not come from a poor family. When he was 18, William married Anne Hathaway in Stratford. But he didn't want to stay there. He wanted to be an actor, and the best theaters were in London. So in 1587, William went to London, where he worked as an actor in a theater called The Rose. He began to write plays for the actors. He wrote Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, Richard II, Antony and Cleopatra, and many more. Everyone liked his plays, and he became famous. When James I became king in 1603, Shakespeare worked for him and performed his plays for the king and his friends. He also worked at the famous Globe Theatre. This theatre presented his last play, Henry VIII. There was a gun in this play, and fire from the gun burned the theater down. In 1610, Shakespeare went back to Stratford. He wanted to live there with his family, but he died on April 23rd, 1610. This date was birthday of him. He was only 46 years old. Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Joseph Hitchcock was born in London on August 13, 1899. He went to school and university there, and in 1920 he started to work with a British film company. In 1920 he also married Alma Revell, his wife, for the next 60 years. They had one daughter. From 1925 to 1939, he made several films in Britain, including The 39 Steps and The Man Who Knew Too Much. In 1939, he left Britain because he wanted to work in Hollywood. He lived in Los Angeles for the rest of his life and made many of his 53 films there. A lot of people in America and Europe saw his famous films Psycho and The Birds. Queen Elizabeth II made Hitchcock Sir Alfred in 1980. Soon after that, in May 1980, he died in Los Angeles. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was born in London in 1889. He first appeared in music halls and then acted on the London stage. In 1910, he went to the USA with Fred Carno's company, but he didn't stay with Carno very long. In 1913, he started to work at the Keystone Company in Hollywood. There he made his first film, Making a Living, in 1914. In his second film, Kid Auto Races at Venice, he introduced the Little Tramp. This character made him famous. Chaplin got married several times. He met his last wife, Ona O'Neill, in 1942 and married her a year later. Chaplin was then 54 years old and Ona only 18. He left the USA in 1952 for political reasons and lived with his family in Switzerland for the rest of his life. He died in 1977. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was born on 8th of January 1935 in East Tupelo, Mississippi. His twin brother died at birth. Elvis grew up in a poor home, but his parents, Vernon and Gladys Presley, were kind and loving. After he left school, Elvis worked in different jobs. He worked in cinemas and supermarkets, and he worked as a lorry driver. This was the job he liked most. Two people helped Elvis in his career. One was Sam Phillips. Sam had a record company called Sun Records. He was the first person to realize that Elvis was a good singer. The second person to help Elvis was Tom Parker. Tom became Elvis' manager in 1955, and he made him into a famous rock and roll star. Elvis won a lot of gold discs in his life. He died on August 16, 1977. Many people say that he died because he took too many drugs and pills.